Hello everyone, welcome to Laodang Seas War. Today's topic is about the Treaty of Versailles after the First World War and China refused to sign. Versailles is a very popular online word in China these days. It means to show off the superiority and seemingly low-key, which more or less has something to do with Versailles Palace in France, though it did not come from the Treaty of Versailles. The Palace of Versailles lies in southwest of Paris, one of the world-famous imperial gardens. In 1870, after the Franco-Prussian War, a Prussian king undertook his coronation in a mirror hall in Versailles as German emperor. France and Germany had been foes for long, which is similar as to the relations between China and Japan. At 5 o'clock in the morning, November 11th, 1918, at the Forest Compagnie, northeast of Paris, German delegates stepped on the train for French Marshal Foch, the commander of the Allied forces, signed the armistice agreement of the First World War and agreed within 15 days that German troops withdrew from France, Belgium, and Luxembourg and returned the territory of Alsace and Lorraine to France, again in Franco-Prussian War, and evacuated from the line west of River Rhine, plus 30 kilometers east of the river, turning in all the aircrafts, battleships, and 5,000 artillery units, and 5,000 railroad locomotives, and 5,000 trucks. Germany was defeated in the First World War, and France would revenge. For retaliation for the shames being defeated in Franco-Prussian War, France insisted Paris as a place for a peace conference, and particularly in Mirror Hall, Versailles Palace, where German Emperor's coronation took place. It can be understood that, and whether for the personal relations or national relations, the issue of honor is very critical. Later, during the Second World War, when Nazi Germany occupied Paris, and on the train where the Germans signed the armistice agreement in First World War, France was forced to sign the agreement to surrender. Paris Peace Conference was held from January 18th to June 28th in 1919. During the meeting, and all the attended 27 countries were classified as 3 levels, with America, Britain, France, Italy, and Japan as the first class. Each had 5 seats, similar like today's 5 permanent members of the United Nations. Some of the countries as Class 2 with 3 seats, and the new and the weak nations as Class 3 with only 2 seats. China was one of the victorious countries in the First World War, yet China was then very weak and poor, so being looked down upon by the big powers. China was grouped as Class 3 with only 2 seats. The 5 members of China's delegates could have 2 of them to attend in turn. China's 5 representatives were Lu Zhengxiang, the Foreign Secretary of China's Northern Government, Wellington Koo, China's Minister to America, and Shi Zhaoji, China's Minister to Britain, Wei Chenzu, China's Minister to Belgium, Wang Zhengting from China's Southern Government. All these 5 diplomats had different future lives, with Lu Zhengxiang later resigning his position as Foreign Secretary, migrated to Belgium and converted to Catholicism. Wellington Koo was China's ambassador to America during China's Civil War in 1940s and regarded as a war criminal by the Communist Party. Shi Zhaoji was the first ambassador to America by the Republic of China. Wei Chenzu, the later was appointed as ambassador to Germany and to Poland. Wang Zhengqing was China's foreign secretary during September 18th, incident 1931, and he was attacked by the angry Chinese due to China's loss of Manchuria to Japan, and then he resigned. The dominant figures in the meeting were U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, British Prime Minister George Eliot, and French Premier Clemenceau. The Treaty of Versailles was signed, and also a series of agreements with Austria, Hungary, and Turkey were also reached. The establishment of a League of Nations and the Versailles system constructed the international framework dominated by America, Britain, and France. At the beginning of Paris Peace Conference, the people were commonly optimistic to the new global world peace. And Wilson's 14 points were popular and welcome, yet the big powers reshuffled the spheres of influence and engaged revenge to the defeated. And the so-called anti-war and national determination couldn't be carried out. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson signed the Treaty of Versailles. It failed in American Congress ratification. The United States did not join the League of Nations, and its foreign policy turned more towards isolationism. According to the peace treaty in 1919, Germany had to pay $33 billion indemnity and turn over all its overseas colonies. It lost 1/3 of its territory and 1/10 of its population. Under the harsh treatment to the Germans after the First World War accumulated the hatred for future revenge by Germany. Marshal Foch remarked that this is not peace. It is just an armistice for 20 years. In September 1939, Hitler waged the Second World War in Europe, and it was just 20 years and 2 more months after Paris Peace Conference. China refused to sign. June 20, 1919 was the last day of Paris Peace Conference, also the day to sign the Treaty of Versailles. Yet the Chinese delegates didn't show up and refused to sign on the treaty. During the First World War, China attended the Allied forces and declared war to Germany with assistance of a large amount of grain to the Allies and about 170,000 of labor to Europe. And among them, about 2,000 people died. China was one of the victorious and claiming to revoke all the prerogatives of the powers in China, including the unfair 21 demands with Japan, and return all the privileges that Japan grabbed from Germany during the First World War. Yet finally, China's requests were denied in Treaty of Versailles, and Germany's former rights in China's Shandong province transferred to Japan. During peace conference, Italy first withdrew from it due to its failure in claiming Fiume area as its territory, and Japan declared it would follow Italy if it failed in getting China's Qingdao. Most of our American delegates supported China's claim to take back Qingdao, and even if Japan left and without joining in the League of Nations. Yet President Wilson yielded to Japan with sacrifice of its own belief in the weak China, and agreed to transfer Germany's prerogatives in China to Japan, which made him blamed in the future. All the Chinese and the Chinese overseas students in Paris undertook large-scale protests on June 28th, and more than 30,000 Chinese gathered and paraded outside residence hotel of the Chinese delegates, and proclaiming "Do not sign." And there were also 15 Chinese youths that organized a death squad, ready to sacrifice their lives anytime for defending China's dignity. And they shouted, "Whoever signs the treaty will have to die." In the end, a Chinese delegate decided to decline to sign before the settlement of the Shandong issue. China firmly said no to the big powers for the first time. And Henry Cavill Lodge From November 1919 to March 1920 in the U.S. Senate, and took 3 rounds of vote and failed in passing the Treaty of Versailles or joining in the League of Nations. One of the major opponents was Henry Cavill Lodge, the Republican from Massachusetts and also a historian. He graduated from Harvard Law School in 1874 and worked as a lawyer. In 1876, he became the first PhD student in Harvard political science. Eventually, he took the position as a major leader of U.S. Senate and chairman of Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Lodge was an absolute realist. He supported the Monroe Doctrine to secure American dominance in the Western Hemisphere. He believed in the motto, have peace if possible, have war if have to. He was a good friend to former U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt and a stern supporter of the American-Spanish War. Lodge strongly suggested the United States stand together with the Allied forces and criticized Wilson's unreadiness to the war. Afterward, Lodge pointed out that Wilson's idealism and the 14 points are unrealistic and infeasible. He reminded post-war military and economic control to Germany in case it's a further threat to European security. Lodge insisted that the U.S. Congress has a final say to a foreign war and signing treaty. Article 10 in League of Nations said all the signatories were obliged to be against all possible aggression to League members, to which Lodge believed infringed to American sovereignty. America couldn't or shouldn't combine itself so closely with European conflict or to the broader promises. In September 1919, President Wilson suffered from stroke, and he got more reluctant in dealing with the Congress or any modification to the treaty. And finally, all his efforts in Paris Peace Conference came to no avail. After the First World War, China became one of the victorious, but still poor and weak. After the Second World War, it won the 8-year anti-Japanese war and became one of the founding countries of the United Nations and one of the permanent members of the UN Security Council. With China's national strength increased, and it has been more influential in the world. And I hope the period of history, the story of the Treaty of Versailles after the First World War, can remind us something in world affairs. Above is today's program, and thank you for your watching, and see you next time. Thank you, bye.